Rehabilitation in this country is failing miserably. According to a NIH study done in 2024, 85% of all people who undergo rehabilitation, they relapse within the first year. Um, my opinion is that the model is based on psychology, and a lot of the models use this thing called cognitive behavior therapy, and that's the same model that the federal prison system uses. And what it does is it tries to identify all these drug addicts, and they take them and they separate them from the rest of the population, and they have to be different. They have to follow all these rules, and they have to go down, and it's modeled after this thing called the TC, the Therapeutic Community. And what it is that all these people are supposed to basically peer pressure everybody else into being sober, into watching their actions, their behaviors, their motives, and all this stuff. You got to learn all these terms. You got to do all these books. You got to do these things called rational self-analysis, which somebody makes you mad or something. You got to analyze why they made you mad and what you did about it, so you don't make stupid, rash decisions that can get you in trouble later. And then you have to do these things called attitude checks, which just it checks your mental, where you're at mentally, and they're not all bad things. But the problem with this is that they give people a year off to do this program, and so nobody really actually wants to do it. They just want to get the year off. So what happens is it becomes a giant theater. Everything's a stage, and it's a big play. Um, when you have to call certain people out for behaviors, they would meet up the night before and decide what they were going to do, and who was going to call who out, and who was going to identify the behavior, so that it looked good in front of the drug therapy specialists. But it was just all an act. Behind the scenes, nobody really cared. They were gambling, they were drinking, they were doing everything they could possibly get away with while they were in there. They never did their module books. Each there was three I don't know what you call it, three groups. There was red, yellow, and green, and for each group you had a set of module books that you had to do, and you had to do so many RSAs, and you had to do so many attitude checks. Well, the problem with that is that whenever people would graduate the class, somebody would just go to them and get all their books, and they would never do any of the books. They would get all their RSAs, they would get all their attitude checks, and they never did any of that. But me being a Christian, even though I didn't agree with the program, the judge told me that my faith, when he sentenced me, that my faith was not enough to keep me clean, that I had to have this federal program to stay clean, in his opinion. So I didn't agree, but I did it. And I did all my module books like I was supposed to. I memorized all my terms. I did all my RSAs. I did all my attitude checks. I did everything that I was supposed to do. And I did it by the book. Just because 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whatever you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. So basically, the whole thing was a big play, and nobody was getting better. Nobody was actually trying to modify their behavior. They were doing stuff to get in trouble and just not get caught. And so what was happening? Nothing. There was no change going on. There was no real change in anybody's heart, because only Jesus can change your heart. And that's why rehab struggles so much, because it's based on psychology. It's based on the material. It's based on what you can see, what you can touch, what you can taste. It doesn't account for the void in your soul that only Jesus can fill, that you've been trying to fill your whole life. That's why Ecclesiastes 3:11 says he put eternity in the hearts of men. And Augustine says we are restless until we find rest in him. That's the answer. That's the answer too. the whole rehabilitation thing is just a show. Everybody just wanted their time off. And even the secular ones, when I was in there, people were just going to get their sentences knocked off. They didn't want real change. They just wanted to impress the judge. I mean, that's why I went, because I was facing a 10-year manufacturing sentence, and I was told if you act like you actually want to change your life, the judge might go a little bit easier on you. So that's what I did, you know, and it's failing. It's failing miserably, especially in the prison system. These guys get this year off and they come out and they're no different than what they were when they went in. That's why we got to rethink this whole rehabilitation model. 85%, 85% of all addicts relapse within the first year, then undergo standard model of rehabilitation. This country is starting to move. We've got to change this model of rehabilitation. It is not working. It needs to be based on faith. It needs to be based on biblical Christianity, because he's the only one that can set us free.